back to Study Hall, and specifically to Philosophy Friday. Today we are really grappling with Søren Kierkegaard.
Always a challenge, but always rewarding.
Definitely. We're looking at his Christian Discourses, published April 26th, 1848. Now this one's interesting because, he published under his own name.
Yeah, it's what he called offering something with his right hand, distinct from his pseudonymous works, his left hand. More direct, perhaps.
More direct, maybe more personal, but still Kierkegaard, so probably not straightforward answers. It's quite a volume, too, 28 discourses.
28, yeah. Divided into 4 parts, 7 discourses each. It feels very intentional, like a structured journey he wants to take the reader on.
A journey starting. Where exactly?
Well, part 1 is titled The Cares of the Pagans. He's starting right there with earthly worries, anxieties about basic needs and status.
So anxieties anyone might feel, not just Christians initially.
Precisely. He's using Matthew 6, the Sermon on the Mount, do not worry about tomorrow, as his foundation. He wants us to look at things like poverty and abundance.
The classic worries, money, status.
Exactly. And he contrasts the pagan viewpoint consumed by these with the Christian one. Think about the examples he uses, the bird and the lily.
Right. They don't worry about food or clothes. They just exist. He calls them schoolmasters, doesn't he?
He does, teaching us freedom from that kind of care. But it's also about lowliness and loftiness, our place in the world.
How so? How does that tie into being pagan, in his view?
Well, the pagan who feels lowly, their main drive is for worldly validation, right? To climb a ladder. Whereas the Christian finds their true standing before God, regardless of earthly position. And the lofty pagan, the one who has succeeded.
Yeah.
Kierkegaard sees them as flying high over the abyss. There's a real precariousness there, because their foundation isn't secure. It's worldly.
That's a powerful image. It speaks to that constant underlying fear, maybe, even with success.
I think so. And then there's self-importance and the anxiety about the next day. This feels incredibly relevant, almost modern.
Worrying about tomorrow. Yeah, who doesn't do that?
Right. But Kierkegaard argues that this constant worry about the next day is the anxiety itself. It's like his whole book, the concept of anxiety, in miniature almost.
So the pagan is trapped, sort of devouring himself with this future worry.
That's the idea. Whereas the Christian understands, each day has enough trouble of its own. Focus on the present. Trust God for the future.
So part 1 really lays out a fundamental choice then.
Absolutely. It's the conflict. Who do you serve? Earthly cares or God? You can't really do both, not fully. That's the challenge he throws down right at the start.
Okay. So after confronting these pagan anxieties, where does he take us in part 2? The title is kind of jarring. States of mind in the strife of suffering.
Jarring is a good word. Because here, everything gets turned upside down. Suffering leads to joy. Adversity is prosperity. It sounds completely paradoxical.
How does he even begin to make that argument?
He apparently considered calling it the joy of Christian irony. That gives you a clue. It's about a radical shift in perspective. For the Christian, hardship isn't the end of hope. It can actually deepen it.
Deepen hope. How?
By forcing reliance on God, perhaps. He talks about becoming rich by becoming poor, spiritually rich, that is, finding strength through acknowledging weakness.
It's a total inversion of worldly values.
Yeah.
You mentioned this came out around the same time as Marx's Communist Manifesto.
Yeah, 1848 was a busy year. And the contrast is stark, isn't it? Marx focused on material poverty and revolution. Kierkegaard is looking at spiritual poverty and, well, a different kind of revolution.
He even uses the term spiritual communism. What does he mean by that?
It's this idea that the poorer you become externally, or maybe the more you recognize your spiritual poverty, the richer you actually make others spiritually through humility, faith, reliance on God. It's not about hoarding spiritual goods, but letting your poverty benefit the community of faith.
So losing things in this world temporally can lead to eternal gain.
That's the core argument. It requires what he calls dying to the world, letting go of the value system that prioritizes temporary earthly things.
But the suffering itself.
Yeah.
It still feels like suffering, right? It doesn't just magically transform.
No, absolutely not. And Kierkegaard is clear on this. Adversity remains adversity until the individual, through faith, comes to see it as prosperity before God.
So it's the belief, the faith, that's the catalyst. It's not automatic.
Exactly. It hinges entirely on that personal relationship, that individual standing before God. It's between you and God, ultimately.
Which really underlines the individual aspect he's always stressing. Okay, so part 3, thoughts that wound from behind. That sounds aggressive.
It is. It's polemical. He's not defending Christianity from outsiders here. He's critiquing Christendom from within.
A wounding from behind. meaning attacking complacency, sneaking past defenses.
Sort of. The motto is key. Christianity needs no defense, attacks from behind. He thinks the real danger is the comfortable cultural Christianity that lacks inward honesty.
Like going to church but not really engaging heart and soul.
Precisely. He uses Ecclesiastes 5.1, watch your step when you go to the house of the Lord. It's a warning against just showing up, against feeling secure in the building without being truly present before God.
That's quite the challenge to the status quo of his time, and probably ours too.
Definitely. And he doesn't stop there. He brings up the radical demand of following Christ. Matthew 19.27, Peter asking what they get for leaving everything.
That's a huge ask. Leave everything.
It is. He contrasts it with Abraham, suggesting in Christianity it's a free choice, this religion of freedom, but how many actually make that radical choice? He leaves the question hanging.
He's really pushing buttons here. What about Romans 8.28? All things work together for good. That sounds comforting.
But he zeroes in on the condition for those who love God. And then he asks, how do we know when we truly love God?
And his answer is?
His answer is when we recognize our profound need for God. Not just a casual affection, but a deep dependence. Loving God means needing him.
So it's not a blanket promise without our active participation and dependence.
Right. He also worries about immortality becoming just, academic, a debate topic.
Instead of something vital, something lived, like in Acts where Paul discusses the resurrection.
Exactly. He contrasts that kind of detached speculation with, working out your salvation in fear and trembling. Faith isn't just intellectual assent.
Demands engagement. He also touches on being mocked for doing good, Matthew 5.10.
Yes, the blessedness of being persecuted for righteousness' sake. He acknowledges this might lead to isolation, pointing to someone like Luther.
Facing opposition for your beliefs.
And then he poses that really uncomfortable question. If Christ came back today, would Christendom, the established church, even recognize him? Or would it perhaps crucify him again?
Wow.
That's heavy.
It's meant to be wounding, remember, to shake people out of complacency. He ends part 3 focusing on 1 Timothy 3.16. He was believed in the world.
Okay, what's the sting there? He turns it right back on the individual reader. The world might believe, sure, but the crucial question is, have you believed? It becomes intensely personal.
Bring it right down to the individual, which I suppose leads perfectly into part 4, the single individual before God.
Exactly. This is the culmination. All the critiques, all the paradoxes, they funnel down to this. Your direct personal relationship with Christ, often framed here through the experience of the Lord's Supper, communion.
And he actually delivered some of these discourses in a church setting, right? With Friday communion.
Yes, in Fruit Church. The Friday setting was intentional, perhaps quieter, more deliberate than a big Sunday service, emphasizing that individual decision to come.
He starts with Christ's longing, Luke 22.15. I have earnestly desired to eat this Passover with you. What's his focus there?
He highlights Christ's intense desire for that connection, that intimacy, and he asks us, do we have that same heartfelt longing for God? Or do we approach things like communion out of duty, habit? Does the longing stay with us?
It's a searching question. Then there's the invitation in Matthew 11.28. Come to me, all who labor.
A verse he clearly loved. For Kierkegaard, the labor isn't just worldly trouble. The deepest burden, the one thing needful, is the longing for God itself. Coming to Christ means acknowledging that spiritual need.
And finding rest there. He also stresses that Christ knows his sheep individually, right? John 10.27.
Yes, even in the crowd at communion, Christ knows each one personally. You're not anonymous before God. It reinforces that individual connection.
Then he tackles betrayal and remembrance, 1 Corinthians 11, the institution of the supper.
Yeah, the irony is stark, isn't it? Betray, yet establishing this meal of love and memory, he challenges us. Do our own forgetfulness, our failures, constitute a kind of betrayal of what this means?
It's relentless self-examination. But then there's comfort, too, like in 2 Timothy. Denying Christ, but God stays faithful.
Exactly. He acknowledges our potential failures, even denial, but holds out the promise of God's faithfulness. Communion becomes this place of potential renewal, of return, because God doesn't give up on us.
That's crucial. And the idea from 1 John 3.20, that even if our hearts condemn us, God is greater.
Yes, addressing that feeling of unworthiness that might keep us away. Kierkegaard insists God's mercy overcomes our self-condemnation. Forgiveness is there at the table, offered through faith. He contrasts it with the rainbow, a universal sign, whereas communion's mercy is specific for those who come in faith.
It's a profound message of grace despite our failings. He finishes the whole series with Christ's final blessing in Luke.
Luke 24.51, as he's ascending, Kierkegaard connects that very blessing to the one received at communion. It's the ultimate gift, the assurance of grace, reminding us of our utter dependence on God.
So this whole journey through Christian discourses, it starts with everyday worries, moves through the crucible of suffering, critiques complacency, and finally lands on this intensely personal encounter with God's grace.
That's a great summary. He's not offering neat formulas or easy answers. That's never Kierkegaard's style.
No, definitely not. It's all about provocation, isn't it? Making you rethink everything.
Exactly. Rethink faith, suffering, success, your own individual existence before God, challenging all those comfortable assumptions.
It really does force you to confront things. So, maybe for everyone listening, a final thought to chew on. Which of your own anxieties feel more like those pagan cares Kierkegaard described? The worries about status, or tomorrow, and maybe? How could reframing suffering even slightly change your perspective?
Or even more fundamentally, what does it truly mean for you right now to stand as that single individual before God? What assumptions about your own faith need challenging?
Heavy questions, but important ones. If this has piqued your interest, definitely check out more Kierkegaard.
Absolutely. The concept of anxiety is a natural follow-up and maybe practice in Christianity, which revisits some of these themes later on. Lots to explore there.
Always more to explore with Kierkegaard. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive for Philosophy Friday here at the Study Hall.